So in the worship plan, which was developed a bit of time ago, I was supposed to be preaching on being adorned with joy and anointed with oil, because as I went through on the first Sunday of Advent, I was going to be talking about adornment. Well, God has a funny way of messing up all of our well-made plans, and this week necessitated a bit of change. So last week, I was having a conversation with someone whom I don't know very well, and we were talking a bit about jobs and those kinds of things. And he made an assumption that many people make about me and my job. You know what that assumption is? That I cannot wait to get out of bed every single morning and go be a pastor. That I can't wait to go change the world. That this is how my life is, right? Now, I love being a pastor, which is why I do this, almost as much as I love being a mom. These are the two things that I feel most sent to do. However, the notion that every day, just because I'm a pastor, that I'm a great witness, couldn't be farther from the truth. The words which most ring true most to me on many days are, "Among you stands one whom you do not know." I think you all know me well enough to know that I'm not going to tiptoe around things, and I'm just going to tell it like it is. I don't know where Jesus is more often than I do know where Jesus is, let alone being able to recognize him in this world. Most of the time, I feel as if I'm wandering around in the dark, and I'm sliding my hands across the wall looking for a light switch to flick on, and all the while sort of tripping over my own 2 feet. Can any of you relate to that? I sort of have this idea that if we are indeed anointed by the Spirit, and we are children of God, that things shouldn't seem so dark all the time. Well, by all accounts, John and Isaiah are great preachers, right? They really seem to know how to capture the attention of the people, pack the pews, and inspire volunteers. Well, it's totally bewildering to me. Because honestly, their preaching is totally distasteful. I mean, seriously, this is what John and Isaiah tell the people. This is what it means to be anointed. Go out and heal the heartbroken. Free the captives. Pardon the sinners. Comfort the mourning. Care for the needs of others. That's not necessarily our vision of what it means to be anointed, plunged into the darkest parts of the world. I would rather be plunged into cool, clear, baptismal waters. This may not necessarily be what we signed up for. But the truth of the matter is, our job description is, we are sent into the dark to witness to the promise of light. We are sent into the worry to witness to the hope that will come. And we are sent into the sorrow to witness to love which always endures. And in that witnessing, in the middle of the dark, we sometimes are blessed to watch as the light shatters through the darkness. And this week, that very thing happened. Among us does stand one whom we often may not see. But this week, people in this congregation, in this community, in these schools saw him. A lot. Of that I'm positive. Many of you saw the email that I sent about the needy families in this area. But if not, this is what happened. I received a phone call from a school counselor, which started off like this. "Hi, Pastor Christine. I feel as if I know you, and I don't know where else to turn. 4 families in my school recently became homeless. Well, I took a very deep breath and sort of held it because I knew what the next question was going to be. And it was indeed, can you help? Well, I wanted to say no. Not because I don't want to help, but because I just couldn't imagine where the more was going to come from. But I didn't. And many of you know I reached out and sent this email. But what happened next? And what happened next was nothing short of a minor miracle. I expected some feedback, right? In the course of 2 hours, we probably had $2,000 come in. And the emails and the phone calls, they kept coming, and it got to the point where I really needed to rein God in because I could hardly keep up. You all had straightened the path for Jesus so much that he was sort of in a full-on sprint. In your own ways, many of you were Johns this week, witnessing to light that would come through the darkness. Now, I couldn't have guessed that Jesus lived in that phone call from the school counselor. But as distasteful as John's preaching can be, it's very honest, and it's raw, and it's true. There is one who stands among you whom you do not know. Thank God he's standing there whether or not we know he's there or not. Because there's more to this story. So that same day I got a phone call from a woman who was grocery shopping, who doesn't go to this church. And this woman was talking to a friend of hers in the grocery store who goes to Ashton United Methodist Church. And she said to this woman, you know, we really want to adopt a family for Christmas or help out in some way, but we haven't been able to do that. So her friend who goes to Ashton said, well, why don't you call Ashton, because they always adopt families. So the woman calls Ashton, and Lucille Miles answers the phone and says, Ashton isn't adopting families this year, but I know a church that is. And so she called me. And she's buying toys and clothes. And all she could tell me over and over is how thankful she is for this church. And then Ashton's preschool wanted to get involved. And I started to worry, because now it was really becoming more than I could control. And the path was more than straight. It was a super highway. At this point, it was hard to see anything but Jesus, which is the only thing that kept me from slamming on the brakes. Well, the phone kept ringing, and the emails kept coming, and people spontaneously started to form into teams to help out with one another. And then there are the families. The families that I then had to call to say, so what size clothing does your child wear? And they would start to cry. And they were tears of great joy. And that is when you know that light does indeed overcome the darkness. There will never be a hymn that is entitled O Little Town of Burtonsville. But this week, the angel Gabriel, she sung a song in a few ears that was heard by many. John preaches that there are indeed dark wildernesses in every town. And Isaiah cries that there are those who are broken and aching. And John and Isaiah, they cry for us, and they cry for Christ to come. And you and I, we join our voices to theirs, crying out, make straight the path for Christ to come. Because he's coming again, as promised. In these days, in these places, and in these faces, we see the one who stands among us, whom we often don't know. But this week, we not only knew him, but many knew him. So I guess this is what it looks like to be clothed in joy and anointed with oil. It just isn't what I had in mind. But then again, God always seems to surprise us, even as we prepare to meet him again. So this week, may you know that the God who speaks everything into being will come and whisper as a sliver of light into your lives, and he promises to illumine your life, to give us hope, and to birth a whole new world.